Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into Bangladesh, where a student uprising just brought a 15-year reign to a stunning end. We're going to break down how it happened and, what this all means for the country's future.
So this was the chant you heard everywhere. And get this, it wasn't coming from professional politicians. It was students. This chant became the rallying cry for a whole nation, 170 million people, and it signaled this massive political shift that, honestly, almost nobody saw coming.
And just like that, it was over. After 15 years of tightening her grip on power, Sheikh Hasina's government, it just collapsed. We're talking a matter of days, and this was a government that had just won a supposed landslide election only months before. She ended up on a helicopter, fleeing to neighboring India. Wild. So, you gotta be asking yourself, right? How on earth did a protest that started on a few university campuses just spiral into this massive uprising that forced out a leader who, for all intents and purposes, seemed totally invincible? Well, to get it, we really have to look at the one little spark that lit the whole fuse. Okay, so this whole thing didn't start with some grand call for revolution. Nope. It started with something way more down to earth. The simple frustration of trying to get a job after you graduate. The entire movement was kicked off by this one really controversial policy about government jobs. All right, so at the very heart of all this anger was something called the job quota system. The part that really got people fired up was this massive 30% quota. 30%, reserved for the kids and grandkids of freedom fighters from the 1971 war. So if you're a student, you're looking at this and thinking, wait a minute. Protesters were arguing that this whole system just threw merit out the window and basically created a system of pure favoritism. And when you look at the numbers, they're just staggering. A full 55%, more than half, of all government jobs were reserved for one group or another. That left less than half of the jobs to be handed out based on, actual merit. For a whole generation of graduates staring down a really tough job market, this just felt completely and fundamentally unfair. You can see why they were angry. The speed of how this all went down is just breathtaking. Think about this. It all kicks off on June 5th when the Supreme Court brings back this quota system. Within a month, you have massive protests erupting. The government's reaction? They come down hard. We're talking force, curfews, internet blackouts, which of course just poured gasoline on the fire. By August 5th, the Prime Minister was gone. A protest turned into a full-blown revolution in just 60 days. Incredible. But let's be really clear here. That quota protest, that was just the spark. The real fuel for this fire, this deep, deep-seated discontent across the whole country, that had been piling up for years. The whole nation was basically a tinderbox waiting for a match. Sheikh Hasina's time in power was, it was a huge paradox. Two sides of the same coin, really. On one side, she absolutely delivered incredible economic growth. Per capita income tripled. Millions of people were lifted out of poverty. But then you flip the coin. On the other side, a lot of that development money got funneled into these massive infrastructure projects that, surprise, surprise, became a way for a small politically connected elite to get incredibly rich through corruption. And at the same time, her government was being accused of just systematically taking democracy apart, piece by piece. Take the 2024 election, for instance. The main opposition just boycotted it completely after a bunch of mass arrests. Turnout was only 40%. And all these stories of corruption just reinforce that feeling that all this economic growth, it wasn't for everyone. It was only for that small, connected group at the top. Critics started calling it a reign of terror. And this is exactly what Dr. Samina Luthfa from the University of Dhaka was talking about. She said, this anger had just been building and building for years. When you have no political way to voice your dissent, what's left? The streets become the only option you have. So yeah, the students may have lit the match, but the whole country was soaked in gasoline, ready to go up in flames. So Sheikh Hasina is gone. And just like that, the entire nation steps into this new, incredibly uncertain chapter. What happens now? Well, an interim government was put together pretty quickly to try and steer the ship through these choppy waters. And the person they picked to lead this transition, it's Muhammad Yunus. You've probably heard of him. He's a Nobel laureate, the guy famous for pioneering microcredit. He's a huge, globally respected figure. But, and this is a big but, he had a really, really contentious history with Sheikh Hasina's government. In fact, many people said her government was pursuing what was basically a legal vendetta against him. So, yeah, some history there. Okay, so the new government did not waste any time. They moved fast to start tearing down the old regime and kick off a process of accountability. Parliament dissolved. They set up a commission to investigate thousands of forced disappearances. And then, the biggest move of all, they issued arrest warrants for Sheikh Hasina herself. And the charge? Crimes against humanity. Whoa. But, taking power is the easy part, relatively speaking. Actually governing and trying to navigate the massive challenges ahead, that is a whole different ballgame.
And the very first, and maybe the most painful challenge, is about justice. The UN estimates that more than 600 people were killed during all the unrest. Most of them were student protesters. Now their families, understandably, are demanding accountability for that just staggering loss of life.
And honestly, that's just the beginning of their to-do list. The interim government is staring down this avalanche of crises, and they're all connected. You've got an economy that's basically collapsing and needs an IMF bailout. You've got a super tense foreign policy situation, especially with India, who's currently sheltering Hasina. And all of this is going on while they're just trying to keep the peace in a country that is still simmering with unrest. It's a lot.
So the ultimate goal, the light at the end of the tunnel, is a return to democracy. The interim government has promised free and fair elections for everyone. But there's a catch, isn't there always? They're saying that can only happen after they complete some deep, required reforms to the country's institutions. And as of right now, there is no timeline for when that might be.
So let's just step back and think about this. A Gen Z-led revolution has toppled a long-reigning leader. That is a truly remarkable achievement, no matter how you look at it. But the hard work, the work of actually building a new, stable, and democratic future, that has only just begun. So the huge fundamental question for 170 million people in Bangladesh is what comes next.